Welcome. What is good journalism? Is it simply content that entertains us, reinforces our existing opinions and worldviews, or influences our decisions that makes us feel like we independently choose to support a candidate, sports team, or brand? Or does good journalism tell us what is truly occurring without pretense of the prevailing views? Does it provide a comprehensive perspective where the audience understands the varying perspectives, ideas, and the reasoning for each? I guess it depends on the topic and the importance. But I think it also matters the brand of the platform that will publish the content. Do they want to be a peddler? How do we define good journalism? Is something a product good journalism if it entertains us, reinforces our pre-existing views, or makes us feel like we independently supported their underlying argument? Do we accept something as journalistic quality if it presents the facts, evidence, and data in an objective, honest, and comprehensive manner without limitations of current prevailing view? Are we willing to see content that shows all sides of an argument or topic? My personal opinion is that good quality journalism provides the reader with a full view of the subject discussed, and allows them to either shape their own opinion or provides them with a complete set of facts to accept or reject the argument made. In the modern media market, where quick reads are deemed good for readers, I think writers should do a much better job of providing comprehensive content that is not slanted or simply meant for the purpose of advancing a narrative, if publishing to what is supposed to be a credible information source. In the sports world, the leading source of new content is Disney's ESPN, the self-proclaimed worldwide leader in sports, and for many of the subjects their personalities cover, the content usually is somewhat insightful, but does lead towards the practice of narrative perpetuation. For instance, I read an article on ESPN.com raising concern about the increased number of injuries facing top European soccer clubs early this season. Teams like PSG, and my favorite European team in Real Madrid have experienced key injuries. A valid concern. As a fan of Madrid, I was not really happy to see players missing action or leaving games, impacting our chances of finishing at the top of the table. And seeing other top teams lose key players is not ideal. Great soccer matchups come when both sides have their full roster and can play the match as intended. I did not have an issue with the subject, but more with how the writer assigned the blame. The article places the blame on the recent Club World Cup that conveniently took place in the United States. The writer raises the concern that the additional games caused by the event led to less downtime for rest and recovery for players. Therefore, the injuries could be a result of players not really having an off-season. Now, I agree that there is an issue of the actual length of the soccer season, because beyond the 38 games in a European soccer schedule, there are Champions League or Europa League matches. There are national tournaments and cups that all add additional games to the schedule. From what I saw, teams may actually play closer to 57 games a year. The reason why this seems a bit odd to me was not that the author was taking issue with an event that took place in the United States, but the aspect that this is not a new event. Real Madrid and Barcelona are among the all-time leaders in wins for the Club World Cup. Neither team raised the trophy this year, so it clearly is not a new event, not a real cause for the effect. So, if there is an impact from this tournament, there should be some trending data that supports the argument or at least shows a correlation. Not provided, just interviews with medical professionals stating that it could lead to more injuries. Medical professionals are valid sources, but they are just stating the prevailing probability. The gap in the content is anything showing that seasons without the World Cup, the Club World Cup, and other preseason events have less injuries than seasons with these events, or simply data showing growth in the number of games and minutes played because of additional matches and events. There are also preseason tours that the top global teams do, traveling to the United States for exhibitions as well as China or other parts of the world. The actual downtime is probably only a few weeks if you really think about it for teams that make it far in the Champions League, which the final usually takes place at the end of May or early June. Then the season starts in mid-August. The writer does account for the impact the World Cup and international play have on player health, but the quality of reporting seemed a bit off to me when you do not show anything that actually provides tangible support for the argument. Having professional opinions are good, but if they are not providing stats from their experience supporting your argument, then why did you not ask them for it? Now, the content on this platform is focused on quick reads and advancing predetermined narratives. If you notice on their broadcasts, their personalities will make the same argument from 8 in the morning through 8 at night, with a few exceptions. They will just have a different person present different angles to reinforce the underlying position. This may be good for entertainment, as I will be the first to admit that I enjoy their day-to-night bashing of the Dallas Cowboys. But not accounting for the other side of the argument is always the sloppy way out. You may not think it is valid, but at least acknowledge that it exists. Get out in front of the opposing view.
I am Jennifer, and let us better identify the issues raised with this topic. From reading the article, the obvious intent is to connect early season injuries for key players at top European soccer clubs to the recent Club World Cup that took place in the United States. The argument is that because top-level soccer clubs participated in the Club World Cup, players experienced greater occurrence of injury because of the extended season caused by the Club World Cup. Now, this is more of an inductive reasoning that participating in this event caused players to have increased injury risk because of the shortened recovery period between the end of the club season and the start of the next season with the global tournament in between. Now, there were mentions of other tournaments as well. There is no disagreement with what should have been the main pillar was that the shortened recovery time caused by additional events and tournaments that top-level soccer clubs participate in, potentially leading to increased injuries early in the next season. Or at least could correlate to the susceptibility of higher injuries. The main rejection is the use of a single tournament as the root cause, as it is not a novel event by any means, and there have many previous winners and teams that made the final that may not have had the same occurrences that we experienced this season. So the slant of using one event and small sample as definitive raises questions of what the real intent is. If the event was not in the United States, like other occurrences, would the article have even been released? The real problem to solve is how can global soccer address the potential issues of the continual extension of the soccer schedule? Not a new issue. For instance, the All-In series on Amazon that is a favorite of Chris, the season with Arsenal. I believe they mentioned just how many games a team would have to play beyond the normal club schedule, which was about 50% more. So that is the question that we want to address. From the journalistic perspective, the content makes an accusation without any supportive evidence to provide any credibility. Maybe the writer was just looking to raise the issue, see how the audience responds and then build on the topic to create a sort of series to work from. Maybe the writer was just trying to quickly put out something to meet his required quota and just thought that this could gain clicks and appease the bosses. While it is missing the supportive backing that you would find in journalistic brands like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, maybe the criteria for publication is different.
Let us start with the issue of player fatigue and injury risks that could be potentially faced because of the increased player activity. There is no denying that players in any sport need some time for recovery after the level of intense athleticism that they display each game. As you know, I am a sports fan, including American football and soccer. I like my Philadelphia Union, as well as Real Madrid, the most successful sports franchise in any sport. They usually play a beautiful style of soccer over the years. A team like Real Madrid has the record number of Champions League trophies and Club World Cup wins and La Liga titles, so they generally play a longer season consistently than the average team. According to the All-In series on Amazon Prime, if you play European competition, it could increase the total games played to 57. I assume that includes national tournaments and cups that each team plays, but not the international games like the World Cup or national friendlies that the players participate in. Consider all the stats about how many miles players run during a soccer match. It is more than the average person may run in a week. The knee-jerk reaction would be to simply cancel the tournaments. But then you must consider the salaries that teams must pay out. These players have great skill and entertain the masses, but they get compensated very well. Revenues from these tournaments are very important to maintaining a top club and attracting top talent. So, what is the solution? What is a viable solution that could work for both sides? One idea could be that soccer clubs be allowed to expand their roster sizes. Currently, teams must limit their top club rosters to a maximum of 25 players, the same players that will play in the club season, Champions or Europa League, and other tournaments. Maybe FIFA should consider allowing teams to add players for non-club tournaments or roster spots that they could move players to and give players some rest and recovery time. At the same time, teams can develop new talent in their youth as well. From that 25, there are 16 players that could reasonably play. Since the number of substitutions have increased to 5 following the pandemic, 2/3 of the roster could see action in any given match. Increasing the roster size could help. Another solution could be to also limit the number of matches a player can participate in a calendar year. This could protect the individual player's health and viability for the season and beyond, but could prove challenging for teams trying to win every trophy possible. Keep in mind that many managers do not survive seasons where they do not win a trophy. So, there is pressure to play their stars as much as possible. There are no playoffs in club play. The top seed is the champion. Now, the journalism aspect again falls under what level of journalism does the platform aspire to live up to. The Wall Street Journal and New York Times are regarded much differently than ESPN, and their crossover audience expects different things from each's content. We go to the Journal or Times to truly understand what is going on in the world and our markets. There cannot be any ambiguity. If they make an accusation or judgment, they need to be able to support it. Sports media is largely entertainment. Very rarely does anything the great sports personalities discussing the happenings in the sports world actually come to fruition. Their commentators and reporters are not held to the same standards because it does not change the world in the same manner that a report from the news world would. Does not make them any less, but just allows for a different balance, and a greater inclusion of entertainment over education. They serve a different market need than the Journal or the Times, although some of their personalities foolishly mix the two different worlds. ESPN is not ABC News. But I do think we can expect that an article alluding to a heightened injury risk actually shows a pattern of injuries. My simple recommendation is that writers and content creators at the very least provide the clear and obvious, and acknowledge opposing views even if they do not agree with them. Ignoring them simply shows a credibility gap in the content offered. There are still a great number of sources of quality journalistic content available in the media, sources that provide a complete outlay of available facts, evidence, and data to help the audience get as complete of a picture that is available at the moment. If there are facts left out, then the piece can appear as questionable to some degree. Many credible sources realize that you need to at least acknowledge what is common knowledge or what can easily be Googled. If a casual soccer observer read the article, they could come away with the view that it was a risk having European teams come all the way to the United States and extend their season. Now they are bearing the consequences of that risk. That is not really the case. The season as a whole is constantly increasing with more events and matches that involve top teams. The growth of the appeal of the top clubs and the drive to maximize the commercial appeal with little regard or safeguards for the players involved is the real issue. Not that teams want to risk players, but the need for growth is important to how these teams operate. Now, the core issue is creating opportunities to rest players during this long season, while still remaining competitive and appealing to the global soccer markets. The reality for many of these top teams is that they have little competition for the top spots, but many do not want to risk suffering the same fate as a team like Manchester United. Maybe, the ability to take the decisions out of the team's hands and give them a viable alternative may be a suitable solution. Many of these teams have great young talent that waste away waiting for a chance at the pitch, end up being sent out on loans or eventually leave seeking playing time elsewhere. Maybe having expanded roster sizes and some limits on usage may be able to spread out appearances and keep talent. Now, back to the topic of journalistic quality. My issue with modern-day news is that most content lacks substance and is generally written for the quick-read casual thinker. If you are looking for content that is comprehensive, then you have to search quite a bit. The Wall Street Journal is pretty good at consistently providing good articles that account for all sides of an argument. The New York Times occasionally gets it right, but we need more. In the information age where there are so many competing sources for the attention of the internet audience, especially in the era of podcasts, many written articles are driving a narrative not making a well-reasoned argument. Informative quality is less important than search engine optimization that values quick readability. There is a great deal of competition and the market is moving away from the written word. Although there are some good blogs out there, people are generally getting their news and information from social media clips. So many media companies are accommodating that shift with quick readable content. That just gives a call to action. But know why? Some people like that. Others will see past it. I think it is important to always be somewhat cynical of what you hear and read. Do not accept an argument simply because it makes you feel good or reject an argument because it makes you uncomfortable. What is the objective facts, evidence, and data support? Too many times we are not willing to experience content that makes us uncomfortable, because we may not be willing to deal with that issue or really understand the complexity at times. When we cannot make snap judgments, we may shy away from exposing ourselves to a topic. And our media takes advantage of that with slanted coverage at times. And they get away with it if people are unwilling to critically think or cannot understand arguments from all sides. The more you know, the less you will operate in fear or based on emotions. Personally, I always try to take the position that there is more information being constantly released. If I read something that I have a knee-jerk reaction to reject, I try to research to refresh my understanding and see why someone may feel this way or that way.
The problem with content that comes off as slanted is that it creates the potential for dissonance amongst the reader base. People read something and connect with it emotionally, as the writer intends, and goes along for the ride. Then a definitive counter comes along and the reader then does not understand why they did not see that coming. Also, people generally do not like it when they believe that a writer may have ulterior motives for what they put out. Because there are people who will not cover opposing arguments to the detriment of their reader base. You are not protecting society or your audience by shielding them from truths, opposing views, or being able to think for themselves. You are harming them. Part of that is also on the market, as people need to stop becoming disciples of content creators. There will always be people that you may gravitate to or others you automatically oppose. But making yourself uncomfortable at times can actually help to strengthen your views. Back to the ideas around soccer and player health. In reality, there is no way global soccer would limit the usage of players because of the commercial risks, as attendance for games where stars are not at risk of not being available will plummet. Similar to the concerns the NBA has with teams that load manage the often injured stars. Fans may only make it to a few games a year, and a top star missing that game can be deflating. Also, the risk to the coach may be too high. For instance, consider the title races between Manchester City and Liverpool. Losing players due to protections may tilt the chase one way or another, leading to a manager potentially losing their job or their legacy being impacted because they did not have a player available. Now, one could argue a player being injured has the exact same effect and could impact the next season as well. So the program could be the best of a bad situation, which I do think is a workable solution. Maybe they limit minutes to save time for games that actually matter. Final notes on journalism. I do not think it is an issue of the good old days, but people are less critical thinkers than in the past. That is why people make decisions based on flawed logic all too often. Many people have a perception and never challenge it. The dogma of "I feel therefore it is." And naturally that approach seeps into other institutions around our society. So sports writers who see all these injuries on teams that made it far in the Club World Cup in the United States will view it as these players should not have traveled this far and extended their season. Even though it is not new. This may be the furthest the tournament has been held from Europe in a while. Also, many writers may have to generate a certain number of articles posted and may just go with quick points that are not really well reasoned as some of their other colleagues who are tasked with more in-depth assignments. So it might not be fair to expect every piece to meet the Walter Cronkite standard. The reality is that many reporters and writers do not live up to traditional journalism standards. Many do not strive to. Some just seek to advance positions that align with their personal ideologies. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter podcast, part of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes of the Christopher Peter podcast and the CRC. Thank you once again. Until next time.